Hey everybody, welcome back to Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl. I'm Carl Rabun,
And I'm Tiffany Salcido.
and we are coming to you today from uh, the lap of vacation luxury, evidently. So we are both not, working today. We're working on this, but we're not on the road, which is something that's I guess unusual for both of us. Usually, if
Yeah.
if either we're both on the road or one of us is on the road, right? And yeah, I'm doing I'm getting used to being home. Yeah, I've been home for like 4 days in a row now. So I don't know about you, Tiff, but how you feel about that?
It's luxurious, luxurious. Like I literally have to like go like this. What day is it today?
Hmm.
Okay, what day of the week is it? What day? Like I have lost track of all time. I've been on off of work and off the road for about a little over a week now, and it feels like it's been about 4 months. It's just wild. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy. Is this what normal people feel like?
I don't know. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
curious. I
I
don't know.
wonder. I wonder. Yeah. No, it was funny because the week before last week I was busy. I was down in Southern California, and then I was training at the hospital there. Then I was in Napa, and so I was running around and it was exhausting. I woke up on Friday and decided I don't think I got out of bed till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I felt wonderful, but the week before that I hadn't, I was a little ill, so it was funny. I was feeling like, man, I need to get to the gym or something because my legs were sore or like starting to ache like after the second day, and I'm like, wow. So if I just power down for a week, I feel like I'm losing my training stamina, right? So I need to,
Yes.
stay, looking at my calves, and they're just kind of sitting there, and I'm just like, man, what's up with that? So I don't know, it's weird. I don't, but
No, it
just
is.
get,
It is stamina. It is for sure.
yeah. So but it's definitely, something you get used to and something
Yeah.
that's fun. And so we had questions last week, and so I want to start with question for you, Tiff, and we can both answer this,
Ooh,
but
I got one for you too then.
uh-oh, okay.
Mine's
So,
ridiculous, but tell me yours.
all right. So, you know, thinking about traveling and being on the road, right? And and one of the things we have to do as instructors is, we get to, sample the local fare sometimes. Sometimes we sample, the Applebee's of the area, but then we also get to check out other places, right? And so, I was going to ask you, what is a place that is a go-to when you go to a specific city or county? What's a place
Ooh.
that no matter where you go, or no matter every time you go there, that's a place you have to stop?
Okay, so there's lots of them. I have lots of go-tos. So you said Napa. When I go to Napa, there's a place called Forge. Forge, it's like a wood-fired pizza and they have other stuff too, but they have like a little happy hour thing called the PB&J, and it's pizza, a beer, and a shot of Jameson for like $10. This was a long, I haven't been there for a while, but this was a thing. But they have these Brussels sprouts there, like an appetizer with this lemon vinaigrette. And I'm telling you, there's like magic and angel dust in that sauce. Like I could drink that sauce that comes on those Brussels sprouts. And so in Napa, that was always my favorite place, was that place Forge. And Napa's got tons and tons of great dining locations, but that one was my all-time favorite. I think you have to like tell me a city and then I can tell you where I like to go there. Um,
We could do that. We could do that. We could have a little once a week, or every edition. We can pick a city and then talk about where we'd like to go.
okay. Bakersfield, I'll tell you real quick. Bakersfield, Coconut
Mhm.
Joe's. Coconut
Mm,
Joe's is one of my
okay.
favorites. In Visalia, I like Farm Fresh bowls. That one's one of my favorite. They have really great acai bowls and they have really good food there. In Sacramento, I love again paisanos. We talked about that last time, but I also really like Urban Roots. And Urban Roots, they have good beer, but they have good barbecue. But they used to have, and they didn't have it last time I went, and I was so, so sad. They used to have these poblano and cheese grits, like these grits. They were like, and then last time they didn't have them, and I was really sad.
Wow. Speaking of poblanos, you know what I had yesterday?
What?
I had two chili rellenos from Trader Joe's,
Mm.
and I was a little, right, okay, but Trader Joe's they try to do justice to things, and I think I might have microwaved them a little too long, but they came out.
Mhm.
They were good. The cheese was good. The poblanos were good. The egg batter was good, and then they had a sauce. That I don't usually eat chili rellenos with sauce. My daughter's
Mhm.
grandmother just makes them dry. And so,
Mhm.
you kind of eat them like a sandwich. And it was, man, but I tried the sauce and the sauce was really good. So I'm going back to go get a couple more because I'm gonna be home for a couple weeks or working from home for a couple weeks. So I might mix that into my weekly schedule. So, but
Mm.
yeah. But I was thinking in Napa, what I found my go-to right now is this place
Uh,
called Moe's Hot Dogs.
Moe's hot dogs.
Hmm.
Okay.
So if you don't know, I'm a hot dog connoisseur, and I
Did
think it's
not know that.
genetic. I think it's genetic because my dad is a hot dog. I mean, if you walk into his house, you'll see a sausage or a dog in a pan just sitting there, But and I grew up in the Bay Area, so I know my hot dogs, Casper's hot dogs, and all these other wonderful places. But Moe's has have a really good variety of different places. I mean, different types of hot dogs, and so I was sitting there eating a chili cheese dog from Moe's, and they're dogs that are all beef. They're those dogs that when you bite into them, they crackle a little bit, they snap.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's how you can that for me that's a good dog. But Napa, yeah, right now it's Moe's hot dogs. I've seen some, I've been some other places too, but that's my go-to right now.
Do you ever go to Potrio's hot dogs in Moval when you're in
I've
Moreno Valley?
been I've been there, right? Yes, yes, and I've been there a couple times. That's my dad's spot. So
Yeah.
um
Okay. Okay.
yeah, it's a big old restaurant. I think it
Yeah.
used to be probably it looks like it used to be a bigger restaurant, but it's kind of cool how they set it up. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I've had
I've
good
lived there.
dogs
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I've lived there, I don't know, 13 years now. I
Hmm.
have no idea. I'm not good at math, but I think I've been there like 3 or 4 times. And the last
Hmm.
time I went, I really, really wanted a good hot dog, and I got the Chicago dog, and it was okay. It was
Yeah.
okay, and I was kind of sad. Like you're known for your hot dogs. I expected a little bit more.
Well, they're known for Chicago hot dogs too, because Portillo's
Yeah.
then they call them they correct you. It's Portillo's, right? Just like
Of course.
yeah, right, right, right. I hear you. It's like the president of Sears when I was working there. His last name was Martinez. I was like, okay, well, cool, all right, get in where you fit in, man. So, but yeah, so yeah, Portillo's is another good place. But when I'm in Bakersfield, I like there's two places, Jake's Tex-Mex, which is fantastic. If you want a salad, it's a salad, it's like two meals, right?
Okay.
And then Sequoia. Sequoia is a sandwich company, and it's what place that I love going to, that I loved going to when I worked for Kern County, and now they DoorDash. So I have them send it directly to the training place. So whenever I train in Bakersfield, they come right to the last door. I have it on my Grubhub. When I put an address there, it says come to the last door, and I'll be waiting outside,
That's funny.
right near the train tracks, right?
Yeah. The first time I went to that location in Kern County, this was prior to the pandemic. It had to be like, I don't know, 2008, 17, 16, 17. And there are apartments across the street from it now,
Mhm.
but it used to just be an empty field. So you drive up to this address right next to the train tracks, and it's like an old industrial building. And I'm like,
Yeah.
they're trying to kill me. Like this. And I have to also say, I was like really deep into The Walking Dead at the time, where,
Mm.
they had that community of cannibals that was at that warehouse on the train
Yeah,
tracks. And so
yeah,
that was my first thought is I've been lured here
that's funny.
with a promise of work, and they're going to murder me, and they're going to put me on that train, and I'll never be seen again. And they didn't try to murder me. They're actually really nice people there. So,
That's
and I
funny.
tell them
That's
that
funny.
every time I go to Bakersfield, I say, first time I came here, I thought you all wanted to kill me.
Yeah. The first time I went to that building was 2003, and I had pepper spray training in that building. And because when for our workers, because we used to have to do home visits, mandatory home visits every week, so they gave us pepper spray, but they had to train us. So where the
Yeah.
train tracks are, where you have that cyclone fence, it used to be a wooden fence, and
Hmm.
so they would train you on the specifics and take you outside and teach you how to shoot it properly. And so that fence, I mean, it's probably if you probably got within 5 feet of it, you were gonna start your eyes are gonna start watering. But yeah, but it's totally changed. You're right. There was nothing there except for the train tracks and an industrial place. But everything's the same. Everything's the
Yeah.
same that it was 20 years ago, which is interesting.
Though I love about that county training in that county, because not every county, you don't get the same reception everywhere. What I really like about there is that when you go, everything is set up. They have snacks, they have coffee, they have like water for people. They really take care of people. So I want to give them props for that because that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also will say I've been sleeping on it, but right there by that building, if you go down the street, like maybe a block closer to like their big county building, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's called Grandma's Tamales or something like that.
Mm, mm,
It's a little hole in the wall Mexican restaurant, but
mm,
they make their corn tortillas fresh. Like they're literally making them, and they're like the size of a dinner plate. So one
mm,
taco is like, I don't know, $3 or $4,
mm-hmm.
but it is like huge. You can't eat two, is what I'm saying. Like they're
Wow.
huge and
Yeah.
they're delicious. So that is my
Mm,
go-to spot. That has been my go-to spot for lunch in
mm.
Bakersfield, as I love that little grandma. And every time I go, I'm like, I had slept on this place for so long because I would pass it all the time and never stop. And now I'm like, their tamales are good too.
Yeah.
Really good.
That's
If you're
cool.
into
Yeah.
that
No,
kind of thing.
no, absolutely. But my go-to Mexican place in Bakersfield is this place called Tacos de Huicho. And it's um it's on Union or anyway, so you just pass the OC Sills building and keep going and you see the big McDonald's and it's to the right and it's a little hole in the wall that they've really built into a cantina and it's super popular and if you get a meal I can't eat lunch there because then I can't finish a class.
Yeah,
So
it's a
yeah,
lot.
so yeah, it's a lot and they're famous for their fries, their papas, right? And so I
Okay.
mean big steak fries like they got to be that big at least and so my wife,
Yeah.
she ordered, well, I want my own order of fries. I said, hey, let's
You
split.
do not.
I promise you. So we wasted a whole thing of fries.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
was
If
fun.
fries are one of those things you can't, they're not good later on. They're not like to go,
Yeah.
unless you air
Yeah.
fryer. But you know what? Air fryers kind of change a little bit of everything. You can put almost
Sure.
the same thing in the air fryer and it comes back to life.
Well, until a hotel room has an air fryer for me, then
That's true.
that's
That's
when the
true.
issue is. So we'll every week we'll have some tips, but
Okay.
also if anybody out there has any tips for any specific places where you are, where we go, you all let us know. You can put them in the comments, and let us
Yeah.
know what are some of your go-tos for quick lunches because we only have an hour, right? So we only have an hour between lunches, and sometimes it's like 50 minutes because we got to set up and everything like that. So, if you can, let us know what a hookup might be in the local area. We definitely appreciate it. So, all right.
Yes, for
So
sure. Ready for my random question?
let's go.
Super random.
Yeah,
What's your favorite Adam Sandler movie?
it's either Billy Madison or Happy Gilmore.
Yeah.
And I'd probably say Billy Madison because I think I know that movie by heart.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's just one of those that, when you're younger, it's something that sticks with you, right? And but yeah, it's that or Happy Gilmore just for Carl Weathers, just for
Yeah.
Chubbs, but But I probably Billy Madison. Yeah, I could say that. Yeah. How about you?
My all-time favorite is Spanglish. I love that movie Spanglish. Like I love it beginning to end. Flor what's her name? Floris. I can't
Cloris
even say
Leachman?
her name.
Cloris
Yes,
Leachman,
thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
She has a line in there where she tells her daughter the daughter's all a mess. Tia Leone, she's all a mess and she's crying. She's got boogers coming out her face, and she says to her, "Sometimes your low self-esteem is just good judgment." My favorite line of that whole movie. I use that all the time. Sometimes your low self-esteem is just good judgment.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but that's my favorite one. And then my second favorite one is I think I guess I love the Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler combos because I'm thinking either 50 First Dates or The Wedding Singer. Those are the other two that I love a
The
lot.
Wedding Singer. Yes,
Yeah.
that's another good one. Yeah, the guy who sings Culture Club all the time. That's hilarious. Because
Yeah.
because I've done weddings, so I know what what they're looking at, what they want. And so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. Yeah, that's
But
a
I love
good movie.
Spanglish. I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I just love Spanglish. It's one of those ones, anytime it's on TV, I'll watch it. Even if I've watched it a million times, I'll pick it up anywhere in the movie. I'll watch the rest of it because it's just so good. So
I,
good.
I I do that with 50 First Dates. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. That one's a good
Yeah.
one too.
Julia Gulia. Yes. From
My name is Julia Julia. I love that movie.
Julia
Uh,
Gulia and Marcy Darcy. Those are two names that just will never escape my head from my childhood. Let me tell you.
so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So if you have any random questions for us as well, put those in the comments. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
come up in a we'll have a Q&A session one of these days once we get through
Yeah.
some of these hot topics.
That's
Today's
right.
hot topic. Today's hot
Mm-hmm.
topic is trust
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about what does it mean, right? And where does it come from? And how do we build it? And it's definitely something that's a challenge. It's something that we talk about a lot. We talk around it, and then I don't know about you, Tiff, but when I talk about it in a class, we talk around the idea. Then once we get to it, we spend a lot of time talking about it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I think that people want tr it's like so complex. Trust is such a complex thing, but it's like I want to be trusted,
Hmm.
but do I trust other people? Like it's like this double-edged sword where people like want to be trusted. It's I get really disengaged when I don't feel trusted, but I also am mistrustful of everybody around me. So, like when I talk about it in a classroom setting and we're saying, okay, like how do we build trust in the workplace? How do we build trust? My first hot tip is always like be trustable. And I know trustable is not a real word. Again, it's Tiffany's, but it feels right. Trustable is like you have to be trustable. You can't be suspicious of everybody. You can't be without integrity and expect people to be trusting.
Hmm.
But even with that being said, you can be trustable. But what trust means, I think, to each person feels very, very different. And there has to be like some ability, like the trust to talk to each other and be like, this is what I need from you, or here's, what I'm expecting and where you're falling short. But people are not, I don't think, trusting each other enough to even have those types of conversations where they can be honest with each other. They just
Yeah.
expect it's common sense. Everybody knows that's how it's supposed to be, but it's not.
Common sense. That's another. We'll talk about common
I
sense.
know. Don't
Common
get me
sense ain't
started.
common, right?
It's
Yeah, for
not so
real.
common. That's right.
But that's where it lies, right? The trust, common sense, expectations, assumptions, all of that. I mean, we can be trustable. I say trustworthy, but now I'm gonna say trustable. So, I'm
Trustable is a good
totally
word.
stealing that. Yes. And, we can be trustable, but we are still suspicious of other people's motives. And that's our brain trying to keep us safe,
Right.
right? And
Right.
I was looking at it's weird. Every now and then I followed my favorite band Radiohead on Reddit, right? And so after that, now I keep getting all these suggestions. You should try this. You should try this on Reddit. And one of them is um this subreddit called map porn, right? Map porn, right? Which just has these random maps and they're based off of stats and questionnaires from around the world,
Hmm.
right? And one of them came up last week that showed the percentage of trust in different countries in Europe. And it's crazy. It's like some,
Hmm.
like in the Scandinavian countries, their the answer to the question is, how trustworthy do you think people are? And I think their responses to that were like in the high 70s or 80s.
Hmm.
And then there's other countries where I think it was Russia and like, some of the Baltic states where they said like 23% of people said that people are naturally trustworthy, right? And so I'm wondering if it's a cultural thing, right? If it's something where, I mean, I was always raised, people are good, but you always got to watch out for those people that are bad, and
Hmm.
riding a bus in San Francisco by myself since I was 7 years old. I was taught to be street smart and to pay attention and to not let people try to game you and always, be always be aware, right?
Hmm.
And so, I mean, that's part of what I do now, even though I try to be as trustworthy, and trust is what two things, right? It's integrity and consistency, right? So you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and you're always going to be the same person, right? And that builds up trust. But I still, part of me is like, okay, well, yeah, you know what this person's going to do, you trust them, but right, and it's
Trust
like
but verify.
trust but verify, and
Yeah.
and that's so I give people trust, and the minute that I see that maybe they don't deserve it, it's very hard for me to give it back. And I don't
Yeah.
know if that's, it's I don't know how it's served me, right? And but yeah, it's definitely one of those things that our brain does to protect us, right? Especially if we were raised, be careful. You never know who's
Hmm.
around the corner or whatever else like that, right?
I think like our natural in well, okay, so first let me tap into the cultural thing. I do
Mhm.
think it's partly cultural. And the way that we engage with people here in the United States is very different from, like, in other parts of the world, especially like Eastern cultures. They're very collectivist. So it's not like what's best for me, it's what's best for we. It's very much about like honoring your family and honoring your community and doing what's in the best interest for the most people. And I think that inspires a lot of trust because everybody has that mentality. Well, not everybody. There's never everybody or nobody, but most people have that collectivist mindset that I can't dishonor my family, I can't dishonor our culture, I can't dishonor like tradition, and so we can trust that people will act in the best interest of the common good. In the United States and a lot of our Western cultures, we're very individualistic, meaning what's better for me, what's going to benefit me, my family, my future, even if it's at the expense of somebody else. And I
Mhm.
think that creates a little bit more competition and
Mhm.
competitiveness with each other. So, even with, you and I working together, which I do trust you, Carl, don't ruin it. But what I'm saying here is that you can have a trusting relationship and again, maybe it gets competitive like, oh, are you trying to steal the spotlight? Are you trying to undermine my? And then
Yeah.
people start to really question each other, and then it becomes almost like a defensive posture. Like I don't want to quote Medea here, but I got to get you before I get got.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have to be protective, and I think that part of that competitiveness, like for me to win, somebody else has to lose versus like we can all succeed together. I think that really deteriorates a lot of trust, especially in the workplace. Or the other part is, again, people think and process information differently. And so if I'm like a very low context type of communicator and I'm like, this is what we need to do, and you, as someone who maybe needs more information, starts to ask me a lot of questions, if you're asking a lot of questions, I might be like, what are you trying to do? Undermine me? Are you trying to make a fool?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
start to, instead of just like saying, oh, let's be open-minded here, maybe they just prefer more information than I like to give.
yeah,
And it's not a personal attack, or you're not trying to, punk me in front of everybody. You're just trying to like get some more information. I
yeah.
think those assumptions, like you mentioned earlier, what gets in the way of people really like trusting each other. Now, I don't need to trust you like, here, Carl, here's my PIN number on my debit card. Like, that's not the kind of trust we're talking about.
Yeah.
Uh,
I deleted that text a long time ago. So, you know,
what the bad thing is? I don't even know what my PIN is on my debit card because I
oh
never use
no,
it. I don't get points off of my debit card. I use
yeah.
other ways. How can I get more money?
But but it's funny. It's over time. You know, I mean, it's cultural, but then it's also, you know, it's like my my dad and my mother-in-law. They won't use Venmo. They won't use Cash App. They because they're that's so I don't know. That's stuff that, you know, I can't trust, you know, where it's going. I've heard these horror stories, you know, and so I'm thinking, you know, I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood where we used to be able to ask, you know, borrow milk and borrow sugar. And and now, I mean, the only reason I know my neighbors is because we accidentally walk out at the same time and we make eye contact. You know what I'm saying? Right, right, right. And so, you know, I think part of it is cultural, and I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, the media plays up the idea that the world is dangerous, right?
Right,
You know, I
right.
asked that question a lot in classes. I said, how many people think the world is more dangerous than it ever has been? And I get a lot of hands, a lot of people raising their hands, right? And so I say, okay, well, is the world more dangerous than it ever has been, or is it just we have more information on the danger? Right? Because when I grew up, like I said, riding the bus, we used to have missing kids up on, you know, billboards on the bus, right? On the back of the
Hmm.
bus, inside the
Hmm.
bus. We used to have, you know, ever drink out of a milk carton with missing kids, right?
Yeah.
You know, we had the Night Stalker, we had the Zodiac Killer, we had, um, you know, John Wayne Gacy and Ted Bundy and all these, you know, the Golden State, you know, Killer and all, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer, right? All these people that were out there that were mass murderers and serial killers. You know, I mean, is the world more dangerous, or is just we know more about it? We have more cameras these days, right? You know, and you know, I think it's a different type of danger, but I don't, and just in general, I don't think it's more dangerous than it has. But the media has to sell ads at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, right? You know, those 24-hour news cycles. So what are they showing? To catch a predator, right? Lock up Raw, right? And those Dateline NBC and all these other shows that talk about how dangerous the world is that maybe people didn't necessarily know. And then all these shows about prison and getting real about prison in ways that maybe, you know, generations before us didn't necessarily know about, right? Didn't have information on, right? And so, you know, it's I think, you know, we've made ourselves more wary. And like you said, you know, that competitiveness or just protectiveness of, you know, what we do and how we do it. And I need to think about myself and my family, right? It's just it's a toxic mix, you know, that really, I mean, when we talk about building teams, right? I mean, you know, but if you don't have trust, you can't build a team, right? But
Yeah.
our, our environment tells us not to trust, right? Not to have,
Well,
not to believe that somebody has your best interest in mind, you know?
but I think it's also very personal, like how your personality is. So for me, as an example, I'm going to trust you until you give me a reason not to.
Mhm.
So I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I want to like believe that people are good people, and I'll go with that, right? I'm still, again, trust but verify. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. I might not again give you my debit card number, but I'm going to like take you at your word until you prove me otherwise. But other people are a bit more skeptical, where I need to get to know you first before I trust you. And then you have to earn my trust. So people, I think, approach it from different perspectives. Um, Again, for mine, like once you've violated my trust, it's hard, if not impossible, to ever get it back. Like I won't ever give you that same benefit of the doubt again. I've always approached with a little bit more skepticism, and I don't know how to undo that. I don't know how to like be like, oh, maybe they've changed. No, you showed me who you were, and I believe you. And I believe you. I'll still be kind, I can still be civil, but I'm always going to be a little bit hesitant and maybe ask a few extra questions just to make sure.
And just think about how that translates to work and leadership, right?
Mhm.
If you are somebody who is managing somebody who's new, right? Maybe, we have different people who pick things up quicker and then some people who are slower learners. And, you know, what if, you have that attitude about that person, we work in government, with government agencies. So we have folks that have been working together for 20 years that maybe started together and then have not worked in the same department and then come back together in different roles, right? So I've heard people say, well, yeah, I work with this guy or I work with this girl, but we started, and she wasn't, she wasn't on her game. She didn't know how to do this stuff. And so now she's a manager. And I'm wondering, how did she become a manager? Because she wasn't any good. Well, you're not giving her any benefit of the doubt that she's grown and over the
Right.
last 20 years. God, don't ask me about who I was 20, 30 years ago. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not the same person. I mean, I feel like I'm the same person, just with maturity and
Right, right.
perspective, right? And I've learned lessons. But, if you're basing your feeling about who somebody is based off of something that's happened, a long time ago and have not, but that's where our brain wants to go. Well, we knew this person. This is who they are. This is who they're always going to be. Right? And so intentionally, we have to say,
Hmm.
what's the breakthrough, right? What have they done, to be able to show me that they deserve, that little benefit of the doubt, right?
So I don't know if you're familiar with, well, I know you know Brene Brown, but she
Mhm.
actually has an acronym for trust that I really, really like. She breaks down trust into um I don't know how many numbers this is, but braving. Braving is the acronym. And so it's boundaries, right? Do you share your boundaries? Do you respect mine? Reliability, which you talked about before, like you do what you say you're going to do and you do it consistently, and I can trust that, if you tell me that this is going to happen, you're going to do it. Um, A A is for accountability. So um if I make a mistake, you allow me to apologize, make amends, and make things better, and I will do the same for you so we can hold each other accountable. V is for vault. And this one I thought was really interesting. Vault is not only do I trust you with my information, but you also are trusted with other people's information. So basically you're not a gossip. Vault is like you can respect other people's confidentiality just like you would respect mine. Because for example, if you and I have a good relationship and I come to you and be like, oh Carl, I got juicy story for you about so and so, then you are already thinking like, if you're telling me this juicy story about so and so, what are you telling other people about the things I trust you with, right? So vault. Integrity, she brings up as part of that. The integrity I really love because she says it's about choosing courage over comfort, which I really, really like. Doing what's right over what's fun, fast, and easy. And I don't remember the third part. I'll have to look it up, but the integrity piece really sticks with me. And then the N is non-judgment. I can come to you for help and you can come to me for help without judgment. And then the last one is generosity, which comes back to the idea of the benefit of the doubt, being generous, that people are doing the best they can. Now, I believe in all of those things, and I want to be a trustworthy person. I want to be trustable. I try to behave in a way that people can trust me. And I'm not perfect, of course. The vault. I have a few a few go-to people. Like my poor husband knows everything. He's my favorite gossip girl because if something happens, I'm like, oh, I got to tell you the story. So with that, um, But I also try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I just really struggle when people have a pattern of not showing those things, right? Like you're not honoring boundaries or you're not coming through with integrity. Like integrity is a big one. I don't know like on the values where you're at, but I know like for my values, my highest ones are freedom, authenticity, and integrity. Those are the things that are most important to me. So I have a really, really hard time getting around people who are disingenuous or who don't come from that place of integrity. That's where I think it's hard for me to trust. I want to trust you, but if you consistently demonstrate that you're not trustable, then I'm always going to kind of be cautious, cautious. And I don't necessarily want it to be that way. Unmute though. Unmute, unmute. Because I'm like, I see your lips moving, Carl. Go ahead.
Yeah, not here. I had to cough, so I don't want to get in the midst
All good.
of your riffs. Yeah, no, absolutely. I like that. I like Renee's you know acronym. They're braving. That's
Yeah.
actually real cool. I use another one, that the 12 trusting attributes, right? And
Mhm.
it's honesty, transparency, right? Being genuine, right? Being who you are, right? It's just, you mentioned, if there's a pattern, what is a what does Maya Angelou say? If someone shows you who they are, you believe them, right? And
Right.
so, yeah, I mean, there's certain things that, there's certain people I can trust. There's certain people who I don't share information with because they can't hold ice water,
Mhm.
right? So, that's definitely something that's true, right? And then, respect, but respect is hard, right? Because,
Mhm.
a lot of people will base trust off of, are you respecting me? But different people have different ideas of what respect is,
Yeah.
right? And then being able, I like people, that vulnerability piece is so important, right? So if you can give feedback and receive feedback, I think that's something that is important, and receive feedback in a way that, is not punitive, right? Or you're not going to
Right.
hold it against me to say, this is something that is important for us to fix. But I think the trust thing gets in the way of feedback because people are like, okay, well, I have to say this to somebody. And so I don't know how they're going to receive it. And I'm worried. So what happens? We get defensive when we give feedback. So what happens when we get defensive? We get emotional, right?
Hmm.
And and so all of a sudden it turns into confrontation. It turns into an adversarial relationship. And so, it's, and based off of which I was coaching somebody last week, Tiff, and this person said that they were newer to their job, but they're in an organization where there's not a lot of support or education for people in that role, right?
Hmm.
And it's just like, government, the higher up you get, the more people think you know. So you don't have to be trained,
Right.
which is the exact opposite,
Not true.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so so she said, I'm not getting a lot of support from my superiors. And when I talk to my boss, he'll be helpful, but then also sometimes I know he's really busy, and so sometimes he responds as being very curt, right? And and also sometimes has had a tone with me that I felt like I was bugging him, or that he felt like I should know this already. And so she said it's a little hesitancy, and then her resources are kind of spotty. Sometimes um, people will provide her a lot of support, and other times people will, it depends on who you're talking to. And
Right.
so she has this challenge. So I asked her, I said, well, what are you most afraid of? And she said, well, I just don't want to be seen as, not being competent at the job. And I said, well, I understand that, and she started talking, and she said, I've had family members that have worked for the state before, and they have warned me, I'm kind of new to state service, but I've had family members that are in state service historically, and they've always talked about, be careful of what you share, to who you share it with, because it can be used against you. So she goes, I guess. And so I said, how much of that is going into your interactions now? And she said, well, yeah, definitely. It's something that I have to think about. And I said, well, has your boss ever, when has your boss shown you that that lack of trust is deserved? And she said, well, he hasn't, but it's still in the back of my head. right? So historically, we've all had good bosses, we've all had bad bosses, we've all had, great teams. We've also had teams that would slit your throat, just as soon as they would, shake your hand. And so I think we carry that baggage into those relationships. But, it's really important in leadership. That's something that's important to explore because, when you have, especially the further up you go, you have exponentially more people underneath you. And if you are developing a culture, like we talked about in the last episode, you're developing a culture of not trusting each other, that's going to go down because your direct reports are going to feel that, their direct reports are going to feel that, and so on and so on. And so, I said, well, what's a conversation you would like to have with your boss? Right. And well, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that. I said, okay. So, is so what's stopping you from being able to do that? She said, well, just that, that I don't, man, the trustworthy, idea, and I don't know exactly where to go with that. I said, okay, well, so I had her write down what she would want to say. And one of the things that came out of that is that they weren't having regular meetings. They weren't having any meetings, right? She said, we don't have staff meetings, we don't have one-on-one meetings. And, I mean, as well as I do, when you don't communicate that, we go into our limbic response, no one's talking to me, what's going on, and she said, one of the strengths of my boss is that he's really good at just letting us do our job and leaves us alone. But what I found in a lot of the coaching and diagnostics I've done with the, 360, reviews and stuff is that people who score really high on, the enabling others to act and to be able to let them do their job also relative generally score a little lower on receiving feedback,
Hmm.
right? And so they're not getting the feedback about how they're doing, and they're just assuming that people know what they're doing. But like you said, there's high context, low context, folks. If you want me to get something done and I've never done it before, I'm kinesthetic. I need you to walk me through it, right? So I will ask you, okay, so I'm doing this first, I'm doing this second, I report to this person, and then I fill this out, and then I do this. I need that linear A, B, subheader one, subheader two. I tell people all the time, yeah, sure, I have a PhD, but talk to me as if I'm a second grader if you want me to get something done correctly. Because because after you tell me what gets done and I will write it down, you probably won't have to worry about me, right? And so she's
Hmm.
worried about having to call her boss every now and then with these tricky situations. I said, well, if you had regular conversations with your boss, how could that alleviate that? She goes, well, I could just save it all for one conversation every 2 weeks or once a week.
Hmm.
I said, and how would that make you feel? She goes, it would make me feel like I was bugging him so much and that I wasn't always coming to him with challenges. So, okay. So, but that was something that she hadn't necessarily thought of. And, the idea of those regular meetings, some people, oh, we're too busy, or we have a scheduled meeting, but then we have to push it back because I have this meeting, I have to take care of this. And then what happens? The staff meeting gets scheduled, and then it's a week before the next staff meeting. So that next staff meeting gets pushed back. And then, it just creates a lack of trust because there's no consistency in us
Right.
being able to have meetings. Right. And
Yeah.
so that's just an example that I see a lot of where people just they don't talk because they make assumptions and common sense, which ain't common,
Right.
and so it causes big challenges, especially as in leadership.
Well, when I'm thinking about like trust in organizations, obviously there's these one-on-one trust relationships, right? So you and I, or me and my boss, or my, do I trust the person making my lunch, wash their hands? Like these are like those one-on-one trust. But when we think of like organizational trust, part of like, do we have a trustful culture? And culture, again, like what are our behaviors, what are our norms, what are our go-to behaviors? I think a lot of places there is mistrust, not just on an individual level, but like mistrust in decision making and mistrust in what people are doing or what their intentions are. And it again, creates that environment where people have to be on the defense. If we really have good trust, if you come to me as my leader, and you say to me, Tiffany, I've been looking at your work recently, and I've noticed that, um, you know, your training activities aren't as interactive as they used to be. What's going on with that? Tell me a little bit more about this change and how you approach training. That is, for me, a trustful conversation, because you're saying, I'm noticing something, tell me your side, what's going on, versus you coming and saying, Tiffany, you don't have any interactive activities. I need you to create more interactive activities. I printed you out a list of ways to make your stuff more engaging or whatever.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just throwing out a random example here. Like, I'm not going to take that as well, because it feels punitive. It feels like you're putting me down. And of course, I'm going to feel a bit defensive about it. So I think the approach of feedback is important, but I also think, like, how much feedback you're giving, and are you giving a good balance of, you recognize when I make mistakes, but do you also recognize when I do something well? If you only talk to me when I've made a mistake, I probably won't trust you, because
Yeah.
you're not seeing me as a whole. And then I'm also not going to trust myself, by the way. Also going to lose trust in myself and my work. I'm going to start to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't get anything right. The only time my boss ever talks to me is when I've made a mistake.
Yeah.
And of course, that leads me to being more disengaged from the work. If I don't feel like I'm doing anything right, then I'm going to stop probably trying and taking risks and trusting that I can grow. I'm going to stick to what has kept me under the radar, what's kept me from those demeaning conversations.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves feedback. Everybody has room to grow. I'm not saying that we withhold critical feedback from people, but I also am saying, is if that's the only conversation you ever have,
Yeah.
then it's not, I don't trust you. I
Right.
don't trust you.
Yeah.
And
And there's,
I struggle with that now.
yeah. Yeah. There's documented evidence of that, right? The
Yeah.
Lozada line, that talks about how many positive interactions you're supposed to have for every corrective conversation, right? And Harvard Business Review keeps track of that. The Lozada line was something like 3 to 1, but they say for high performing organizations, Harvard Business Review says that it's 6 to 1. For every time you have a corrective conversation where somebody's telling you did something wrong, you're supposed to have 6 positive interactions with your boss, right? And I mean, and positive interactions doesn't have to be, hey, you did really well on this project, or, you're a rock star. We know how you feel about rock stars, right? And so, but it's, like we've said before, how you doing? How was your weekend? Did you watch the Olympics? Right? How was
Yeah.
your daughter's birthday party? How was your vacation? Right? Those little things like
Or,
that, so that I know that you're
yeah.
interested in me rather than just what I do at work. You're interested in me being as a human being. So when you come to me with that corrective conversation, I know that you have my best interest in mind, that you're trying to
Right.
help, further somebody that
Yeah.
you actually care about, rather than you're a body, right? And this body
Yeah.
made a mistake, you know?
Yeah. You know, I've had, like you said earlier, I've had really good leaders. I've had really not so good leaders. And, where I really struggle trust with the trust issue, uh, I'm a relationship person, right? I'm all
Yeah.
about, like, I want to know people, I want to talk to people, I want them to trust me, I want to trust them. I'm very, very invested in workplace relationships, and networking is huge for me. Like, I want to know people in every department. I want to know who I can go to ask the questions to. Um, so for me, I try to be very open. I want people to feel warm and comfortable. I really try to approach people from a place of friendship. Again, you don't have to tell me, like, Carl, sit with me and tell me your childhood traumas. Like, I don't need it to go that deep, but I want you to know, like, I'm an ally. I don't work for anywhere that I am not invested in making the place better, right? Like, I'm very, very invested in, like, being a good representative of whoever my employer is. I've always been interested in that. And so when I've had leaders that don't ever acknowledge like the contribution, but are real quick to point out any flaw. I really struggle with that. And it's not the flaws are not invisible. Like, for example, I was late for work for 12 years. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Tardy Tiffany is my street name. I will never not be accountable for the fact that I was late for work for probably 12 years straight. That's all true. And I also am highly efficient and produce probably 50% more work than the average worker. So if you can do 10, I can do 20, you know,
Hmm.
and it's accurate and it's correct because I'm just good like that. I've never said like, Tiffany, you're a really high performer, and I noticed that you do twice the amount of work as your, you know, colleagues do, and you know, we appreciate your contributions, but then you were 5 minutes late. I'm going to feel defensive about that 5 minutes late because you noticed that, but you didn't notice when I stayed extra yesterday and cleared the lobby. You didn't notice yesterday when I, you know, did all of that additional work because I was done with mine. So I picked up the slack for somebody else. You didn't see that, but you noticed the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. And now I don't trust that you trust me, and then I don't trust you. And now we're down an ugly road where I may not perform at my best.
Yeah. If you don't see my value, then, then I'm not going to trust that you have my best interest in mind.
Right.
So when you are pointing out my flaws, I'm going to feel like you're picking on me. Right.
Exactly.
And that's
Exactly.
a huge, huge piece of why people stay and why they leave. Right.
Right.
So, low performing organizations, we're at 6-1 at high performing organizations, it's 8-1 at home. Right. And, low performing organizations, it's for every one positive interaction, there's 3 corrective conversations. So if 3 out of 4 conversations with your boss are going to be something negative, you're not going to want to talk to them, and you're not going to perform as well. Like you said, efficiency, engagement, because I don't want to make a mistake, because I don't want to have to hear it from my boss. So that keeps us from putting our best foot forward and trusting that we're seen with value. We're seen, if that's all we hear, we feel like we're just a screw up, and that's who we are, right? And it's pervasive. It gets into our workplace culture. And if we're the only one, we're not the only one who's feeling that usually, right? Unless somebody has something out for you or has a feeling like people that are in your role are, looking to or aren't performing well or are looking to get over or to make mistakes. If you have this inherent feeling of, and suspicion about people, then that's where your actions are going to come from. Well, you know as well as I do, well, for to work, if you have a feeling that clients are trying to get over, then every action you take with that client and that family is going to be based off of, well, you're trying to get over. So I'm not necessarily going to trust that, you're going to work the program correctly. So every time anybody comes up with a reason why they can't come to a meeting. Oh, okay, you can't come. Okay, well, there's a sanction, but I really can't. I have childcare issues. Yeah, okay, sure. Everyone says that, right? And those things like that. I mean, I've heard people that I've worked with. I wish I had my childcare paid for. I wish I had my mileage paid for. So if that's the attitude you have when you go into your interactions with your clients, how are you going to treat them, right?
Yeah.
If you are, in an office and you have workers who are busting their tails to do everything right, but you have a suspicion about, are they doing something correctly? And, well, this is what I've heard, or this is what what I've seen, or other people have said this, then how is that going to affect your interactions when you have a question about something that somebody has given to you? Okay, well, maybe this is a
Right.
mistake, or is this a mistake, or is this proof that they're trying to get over,
Right.
right? And so, our brain will lead us towards that path. If we have a belief and a bias against somebody or something, confirmation bias is hard to break because, confirmation bias is when you believe something, even when you're shown proof that that's not true, you still want to believe it, right? Oh, that person was an alcoholic. Oh, they're 20 years clean. Yeah, sure. But all it takes is one time,
Yeah.
right? And that's where confirmation bias is. And it's insidious and it affects people's judgment the way that they perform with each other, and it affects the other people that they have biases towards. So if you think someone is trying to get over, that's how you're going to treat them, right? And it's terrible. It really kills cultures. It kills people's ability to work as a team and to be, honest and truthful with each other.
I think that's so very true. And you notice that even like from the other perspective, right? So, working in government for 2 decades, I hate to say it, but government employees, we don't have the best reputation. We don't have the best street cred, right? So when somebody's coming in to get services, when somebody's coming in from the street, like they have that mentality already. I'm going to be treated poorly, right? I'm like, again, I go to the DMV. I'm not like, oh, this might be a great experience. Like, I go to the DMV ready to be like, okay, what nonsense are they going to tell me today, right? What, what Facebook post am I going to, I don't even have Facebook, but like what's going to be the DMV story today? Because I know it's not going to go well. I'm always like surprised when the DMV appointments are like quick, efficient, and done. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, interestingly enough, I've had almost every DMV interaction is quick, efficient, and done. And yet I still go in with this idea that it's going to be a shit show
Yeah. Yeah.
every single
Yeah.
time. But
Yeah.
with that being said, like working in government, we are the DMV to other people. They're coming in
Mhm.
like, I've heard that you all don't like people. I've heard that you treat people poorly, that you look down your nose, that you're judgmental. And so they come in, not everybody, but a lot of people come in very defensive when we really just want to help. And that comes again from that stereotype of not just, again, who the people we serve are, but who they think that we are. And then that finds its way into like people think of leadership and management. They're always going to be somewhat suspicious
Yeah.
of like decisions being made, especially if it's not communicated well or it doesn't make sense or nobody's been consulted. And I'm not saying that leaders have to consult with the people, but it's like if you're making decisions, like we need some of that communication. We need some of that information because staff hold information that management doesn't have. Just the same as customers hold information that the staff doesn't have, and so on and so forth. If we can't trust each other to be able to elicit and like listen to the other perspective and always be naturally suspicious, then it's going to be a problem. And it takes, by the way, right back into the damn drama triangle. I hate to bring back an oldie but
Yeah.
goodie, but it brings us back into that drama triangle. And I know for me, from like a consultant perspective, like when I'm looking at an organization, if they're like, we're having some problems with engagement, we're having some problems with performance, like, can you come fix it for us? The first thing I look at is do people trust each other? Do they talk to each other? And so some of the things I look for is signage in the break rooms, in the bathrooms, on the wall. So if you have like quiet area, people are on the phone, or you go to the break room and it says, clean up after yourself, your mama don't work here, or stop using my coffee creamer. I put laxatives in it. Like if I see that kind of stuff right away, I can tell you they don't trust each other, they don't talk to each other. The second thing I look for is documentation. If everything says per Carl, per Tiffany, per so and so, per whoever, that tells me they also don't trust each other. And they want to make sure it's documented that if there was a mistake, don't come for me. Carl's the one that told me to do it. Go talk to Carl.
Yeah.
And so that's like a protective instinct, I think, for many people is to put per this other person, that's who made the decision. Leave
Mhm.
me out of it. I just did
Yeah.
what I was told.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I pay attention to. And then I'd love to ask the question. I've been running this informal survey for years now. The informal survey is if someone had a challenge for your behavior, would you want to hear it from them directly or from somebody else? And almost universally, people say, I'd rather hear it from them directly.
Yeah.
And so then my follow-up question is, if that's the case, if almost 100% of people surveyed, which I've only had maybe 3 people in all of my thousands of people I've asked, I've had like 3 people say, well, it depends. If that's the case where almost universally we would rather hear from the person directly, if that's the truth for almost all people, then why don't we have direct conversations with each other? And I ask, like, why do you not have that direct conversation with somebody? And almost always they're like, oh, I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know how they will react. What if they get mad at me? What if whatever? And that tells me it all comes back to trust. They don't
Yeah.
trust that they can have adult to adult conversations without drama.